Welcome to the Grow Your Practice podcast. Hi, I'm your host, Chad Madden, owner of Madden Physical Therapy and Breakthrough. Join me each week as we dive into the best practices, systems, principles, tips, and tricks to help you grow your private practice. Hey everybody, Chad here, and today we are with Bob Kowalick. Bob, I think this is your maybe seventh time one. I feel like we're on Saturday Night Live doing the Five Timers Club, and you walk out with your velvet robe welcoming Steve Martin. But welcome back to the podcast here.
Yeah, thanks. It's always great to be with you, and appreciate all that you're doing for PT, and hoping to share your knowledge and knowledge that others have gained. And that's what this is about. So yeah, I appreciate you always asking me back.
Yeah, man. Thanks for doing this. We're going to run through the 11 questions. I do have a bonus surprise question for you here at the end.
Great.
But for everybody listening, we are putting together a book, Titans of Private Practice PT, and you'll be getting access to all the recordings for everybody, all the contributors that do choose to record, like Bob, like Doug. But question number one is, what is the book or resource that you've recommended the most to other practice owners, and why?
This book,
which for all the
you happen to send me an autographed copy of this, which I appreciate very much. It's a book called Scale. It's by Jeff Hoffman and David Finkel, I like this book and recommend it because of how structured the process is that it lays out in the book about scaling a business, right? It's not about specifically scaling a PT practice, right? It's about scaling a business, but a PT practice is a business. So it's a very logical, orderly flow of what really matters and what you need in terms of infrastructure and foundation, and how one thing is related to another. And so it's a very practical, usable, almost blueprint, for how to think about scaling, your business. And, like any subject matter expert, right? I think the reality of having been there and done that matters, right? There's a lot of experts out there that have never really done what they talk about. So I appreciate you. I mean, you've had great success, and Jeff and David have had a lot of success in different kinds of businesses that really building and scaling and growing and understand what it takes. So I think it's a great resource everybody should have on their shelf.
And just for all the listeners that are not familiar with Bob, Bob, you had a practice in Michigan, I think, if I remember correctly, in roughly 7 years, you went from 0 to 10,000 visits a month. And so when we're talking about scaling, we're talking about growing a practice beyond your own ability to treat.
Yeah, I went from 0 to 10,000 visits a month in 4 years.
Ooh.
Yeah. and which was, I don't know, it's not all fun. It's a lot of work, and I'd be happy to talk about what I think, contributed to that if you want. But, it's am a PT, was a practice owner, and everything that I do today is about helping practice owners, be in the business and have a better business. So, I think it was an easier time then when I did it than today. I think today's about as tough as ever in history. So those of you who are out there trying to do what I did years ago, more power to you. It's a tough time. And I think it just points to the fact that it's really important to have systems, controls, process, and things. And that's what that book really lays out.
Yeah. We'll link one of your previous episodes where you went into that a bit about growing and scaling your private practice. Next question. What practice management tool, system, or purchase under $500 has had the biggest impact on your private practice success or in you helping other owners right now?
Yeah, this was hard for me because the under $500 was the was the hard thing, and I can't say that I could monetize this at under $500, though I believe there's a lot of options there. But in my history, I think um, it was getting outside of physical therapy business and integrating and having a peer group and talking to others that were in business but not necessarily my business, because business is a thing that physical therapy is a part of, and understanding business and what makes business successful. We're taught nothing in PT school about business, right? So I had to kind of learn how to be a business guy, for lack of a better term, and being part of groups of business people and understanding their perspectives on just being in business was really super helpful for me.
What was your biggest failure or setback as a leader in private practice that ultimately led to breakthrough growth or learning?
Yeah, there's a concept of trust but verify,
Hmm.
and the verifying part is the tricky part, right? Verifying means you have data, you have systems, you have ways of knowing what's working, what's happening, what's not. I think the biggest failure I've ever had really ties into just um, trusting other people, delegating things to them without really the system in place to really understand how what they were doing was actually working right towards what our common objectives were, and so kind of being in the dark, right? So I think having failed a lot cost me a lot of money, by just not really having my stuff together. um, is is probably the thing that caused me to fail the most. But also, that failure was a major learning, um, driver, for me, and what's caused me to go down this path of really being a data guy. You're really knowing, the difference between what you know and what you think. And so, yeah, I would say the biggest failure is it was just not having that um, control. That controls maybe a weird word, but the systems and controls, the data, the process, the ability to objectively know what's going on, what's out of your control, and most everything is out of your control except yourself. So it's you have to have that um, balance between trusting what others are doing, how it's supporting common goals, the mission, but then knowing that that's actually what's happening.
All right, I'll take the bait. Was there, without getting too personal,
Yeah.
and I'll give it a quick example. I remember the first billing person I had ever hired. We had our AR was not increasing, and our cash was it made no sense at all. Like we were like receiving about 50% of the cash that I expected to. And I remember like every single night, like, hey, are you doing, yep, doing everything that you said. So I trusted her for about 8 weeks. And then I said, I gotta like go into our bill. We were using MedN at the time. And I said, just pick any random date in June. So she went back 2 months and she opened it up and I said, okay, so what do all those white little things? Oh, I didn't submit those bills yet. I didn't submit the claims yet. And I was like, oh man. And that I'm gonna guess that was about $50,000 that we had in unbilled claims. That was more than 60 days old when it was all said and done. Is there a story like that the first time where you were like, oh, I need to look at metrics, I need to look at work, how where you were like, oh, I need to verify what people are doing and not just listen to what they're telling me?
Yeah, and mine was on a bigger. Not all things are important. Billing is super critical, obviously, to practice success. But mine was I put a guy in charge of um, basically knowledge development, right? Intellectual property development. and was paying him a really decent amount of money. And while I was thinking he was really working hard on developing our IP base for what this business was really being built on, he was basically stealing my IP and using it on his own to do a completely parallel different business that I was completely unaware of, and it was just using me to you know kind of help him do his thing when and I had no idea this was going on. I mean, it was a big thing.
It's a rough lesson,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
rough path to a breakthrough. Do you have a personal go-to mantra or a favorite saying? It could be trust but verify or anything else like that.
Yeah, it's there's what I know and what I think. And it's
What's that
important.
mean?
Yeah, it's important to know the difference, right? What I know is it's fact. It's like the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. It's a fact. It's what I think. It's my opinion, right? And I just think it's always important to it ties into trust and verify. Verify what you think is knowledge, what it's fact based as being so. And facts can change over time as data shows that new things become true, right? But the world's full of people that have a lot of opinions but don't have a lot of real knowledge. you know, they live in what they think. I like to live in what I know. And not saying that you can't have opinions and that's not important, but you have to separate the two. I think it's important in relationships to make sure that there's clarity around what bucket things fall in. Don't ever put what you think in as true knowledge, as fact based, data supported, knowledge without telling, making sure that the other side knows that this is in the bucket of opinion. So that's a thing for me.
Great. What's been your best investment within your practice, or it could be within RCS, or any other businesses that you're involved with, whether it's time, money, education, energy. Yeah, what do you got there?
Yeah, it's invest in yourself. You as a business owner, right? Your business success, your business can only be as healthy as you are as a whole person, right? And so you have to take care of yourself, right? Invest in yourself. So and fill in the blank, whether that's knowledge, experience, health, family, relationships, whatever blanks you want to fill in. Um, just know that ultimately, the quality of your business is kind of directly related to how well you invest in yourself.
What's an unconventional practice management approach or weird habit that works surprisingly well for you?
Um, I don't know if this is weird, but I think it's uncommon. But to truly be innovative in what you do, um, it's I think our industry is needs more innovation. People that are kind of thinking out of the box, doing things different, experimenting, right? Innovation means experimentation. And the fact that you're in experimentation, you can't possibly know what the outcome is until you actually go through the process, right? And we have to be, willing, brave enough, able, whatever the adjective is, right, to go out there and do things, differently. Henry Ford said, if you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. And being a business, scaling business, right? All this stuff is you have to think and be innovative, right? Um, Being original in terms of thinking is creativity, but innovation is really about doing things, right? That are different, and so just I've always been this weird kind of on my own path type. I whether it was mountain climbing I did for 20 plus years and doing routes that other people hadn't done before and stuff. I just have always been that kind of weird guy that went out and trying to did experiment a lot and tried things that were just different for me, right? And so um, I've learned a lot from doing those things.
And
It's where new things come from, right? There's another guy. His name's John Culkin. His famous quote is, we're not sure who discovered water, but we're sure it wasn't a fish. Right? So I think like that.
Nice. The quote that came to mind for me was, "Whoso is a man but a nonconformist." I
Yeah.
think that's Ralph Waldo Emerson, but yeah,
Yeah.
I get it. In the last 5 years, what new mindset, system, or approach has most improved your business's performance and your quality of life?
Yeah, this will come as no surprise, but it's about data. It's having the right data. It's about understanding, connecting, knowing how to measure what matters, and then using that data to reinforce what works and move away from things that don't and keep trying to find other things that do. And so it's, I believe data is the foundation, right, for whatever your thing is, right? But what business, what people do, right, is they implement and work in various processes throughout a day, right? And the right data helps to improve process. And if you're better at whatever process it is you do, you get a better outcome, and better outcome means better business. So I think that the data is the foundation, which really ties into this whole mantra of, well, what do I know versus what do I think? I really want to know. And data tells you a story.
Yeah, I just won $10 on Polymarket. I took data, but I had to lay $1,000 to win $10 that you would say that.
Okay.
I'm just teasing.
That's
Uh,
risky. Yeah.
what advice would you give to a PT about to open their first practice? You alluded to this somewhat before, that the environment was different back, 20, 30 years ago versus today. But what advice would you give, and what conventional wisdom should they ignore?
Yeah. So I just lived this, right? My son's DPT. My daughter-in-law is a DPT, and January 1st of 2024, they made a decision with my, advice, help, counsel to open a practice. And as a guy that's been through a lot in PT, the PT industry, private practice, that was not an easy decision for me to even be able to say, do I think this is a good idea? Is this a good business to be in? Right. Um, my approach with kids has not been to try to tell them what they should do, but help them make their own right decisions, right? And just provide data and information and some influence. But yeah, so what I said to them was, you're about to go into a reality where um, it's a different kind of risk. It's a different kind of demand, right? On your time. There's dependencies that become created for you that you don't have today. How is that going to really fit into your life? How you spend time? How is it going to affect your mindset? Is this really something you want to do? Because those things, that decision, that commitment, is brings many other variables into life that you may or may not be comfortable with and aware of even. And so I just tried to make them aware of, not to scare them away from it, but to have a fact-based, assessment of what does it mean, to go into business. And I think the biggest, thing, because we're not really taught about business in PT school, but this wisdom that, well, if you're a great PT, you're going to have a great business. You can be the greatest PT in the world and never get paid.
Yeah.
You know, or so it's more than that. You have to be, yeah, I do believe to be in a PT practice, you should be a great PT, right? The core competency, the thing that you sell, is your relationship with patients and your outcomes. But you need to become a great practice owner, right? You have to become the level of a business owner that you are as a clinician, ultimately to have success. So I would say to just not ignore it, but realize that there's a lot more to this than just being, it's the build it and they will come mentality, right? You're a great PT. You're going to be busy. Okay.
Yeah.
A little more to it than that.
What have you gotten better at saying no to as a leader, and how do you protect your time and energy from the endless demands of running a business?
I've gotten a lot better at saying no to anything that's really not aligned with the path that I'm on, right? And this comes with time and experience, and knowledge is to have clarity about where you're headed. I climbed mountains for a lot of years, to know what route you're on, right? And there's a lot of distraction. There's a lot of so-called experts out there, right, who think they know things, but maybe don't really. But you got to stay the course. You got to know what really is there, what's coming your way, and how it fits into your commitment, right? The path that you're on, and know when to be objective and critical about things that are really maybe a redirect, not at the right time, or a distraction that are going to take your focus away from, what matters to the path that you're on now, at today's time, and maybe towards the future. So, that's you get better at saying no to the things that are not aligned, essentially.
Great. When you're feeling overwhelmed by the demands of life and running a business, what do you do to regain focus and clarity, recenter yourself?
So there's a concept of being present, right? Kind of being 100% focused on like now, versus, so to me, it's always been about having other things in my life that helped me kind of reset, move away from the distractions, the stress, the noise that's in your mind, right? And how do you control that and for me, it was doing things that forced me to be in the now, to be present. There's a great book. It's old, but it's still a great book. It's called The Power of Now. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Eckhart Tolle.
Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah.
It's just that concept, right? Is what is kind of resetting and clearing, right? About how you do that. And mountaineering did that for me. It wasn't a rush, right? It wasn't a thrill seeking thing. It was a environment that forced presence. Martial arts did that for me. Meditation did that for me. I don't do martial arts anymore. I'm not climbing mountains anymore. Now I do other things that are more, causing my mind to kind of focus on and create clarity by just being present. I write songs, I do things, and even, having grandchildren now, right? It's kind of a cool thing. You get to just hang with them and be present, and their new audience for your old stories, so it's, there's a lot there. You can find things that just help you, help you focus on something else, right? Learn something new. I do a fair amount of that, and we've talked about this. I mean, I'm crazy in that I read, quantum physics. I'm just interested in learning like stuff, like how does stuff work? Got nothing to do with being in PT though. It's interesting how when you learned a completely new thing about something that you really were just unfamiliar with, how sometimes there's analogies and context and connection to the things that you do every single day. You just never know where some kind of good piece of information is gonna come from. So I kind of force myself to go outside what I do and know every day and learn something completely different.
Cool. Bonus question.
Okay.
This you didn't see beforehand. What's a trend you see influencing private practice in the next 5 years that's it's being overlooked right now, or many owners just aren't talking about it in any way?
Can I say what I think the trend should be
Yeah.
versus what I really think the trend is? I see trends in different kinds of business models, right? Different revenue models, which are all positive things. Cash options. I think generally practice owners need to be careful that about how new things, kind of like what I said before, are they really aligned with what your mission is for being in business, and how do they support that and take you into a more stable direction. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on there. And there's things that I think are maybe trends that maybe aren't so, not necessarily guaranteed to be a home run, right? You never know. Um, so, but I think what I think needs to happen in PT over the next 5 years, and if this doesn't happen, I think there's uncertainty out there, and I think physical therapists need to own musculoskeletal health management, not just be restorative caregivers, right? Think about what dentists did 20, 30 years ago. You went to see a dentist because you had to. Now you see a dentist because you're supposed to. And 5 years from now, 10 years from now, as a profession, we need society to see physical therapists because you're supposed to, not because you have to. You'll always have the I have to see you. I went out like me, breaking off my lateral tibial plateau in Alaska skiing in March. I have to see my son as a physical therapist. Okay, but that stuff's going to happen. But we need to position ourselves and redefine our value proposition with society around managing the most important body system there is, your movement system.
Bob Kowalick, you're a beast. Thanks for being on the Grow Your Practice podcast once again. Always a pleasure.
You are welcome. Thank you, Chad. Appreciate it. It's always great to be with you.